I always crack up because everyone's like, what's that one killer use case? And I'm like, well, that's like you asking me, what's the killer use case of the World Wide Web and all the websites that are built? I'm like, it's endless on how we connect with each other. And so the same thing goes for the metaverse. The internet was formed with a lot of walled garden platforms like AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. And their sole mission as a company was to keep you inside their walls, right? AOL wanted to give you email, they wanted to give you the news, they wanted to give you the ability to shop and do things completely within their walls. Now, they're one of the largest companies in the world at that time. And one thing that you can't compete with is an open ecosystem. And when someone finally introduced the idea of a web browser and standards started to be creating, it was impossible for AOL to compete with all of the creators and developers and engineers that could build the pieces necessary for the World Wide Web. Because I think a lot of companies, they look at, well, how can I use these technologies that no one else has and build a closed ecosystem and make a massive amount of money? And for us, it's the opposite. We want to empower every single creator that I believe has really got the wrong end of the stick, right? They're their UGC. It's like, come build in our walled garden platform and we'll give you 10 cents on the dollar and thank you for the billions of dollars that we're making. And that's not fair. And I don't think that's fair for the developers, the creators, and more importantly, the businesses are not going to jump in to start building all this XR content until they know they can own their own infrastructure. And so I believe that we're starting a movement towards this open ecosystem that is necessary for the masses to start adopting these technologies.
Thank you for joining Once Changing the World, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Avil. Today, I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Sean Mann, who is CEO and co-founder of RP1, a company at the forefront of Metaverse infrastructure and multiplayer technology. They have developed a shardless Metaverse architecture, a network platform capable of supporting hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of concurrent users in a single persistent real-time virtual world. RP1 has also developed what they call the world's first Metaverse browser, a massive persistent virtual world directly from any web browser, including your XR devices. So Sean, really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. Wanted to start with Metaverse itself, because a couple of years back, post Facebook transition to the name change to Meta, there was a huge hype, and then the hype has completely disappeared sorts, because it's no longer even cool to use the term Metaverse. At one point in time, it used to be cool. Now, I think people are averse to even taking the name Metaverse, So maybe help us, possibly if you have like a definition of Metaverse, maybe define what you think Metaverse is in your, or where are we currently? And where do you think Metaverse is going to go in the next few years?
Yeah, well, first of all, Eddie, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to do this with you. I love a lot of the podcasts you've done because you get to see the future and you get to meet with lots of great pioneers that are thinking kind of what's the next step. So thank you for inviting me and having me on here. So that's a great question to start off with. I think that, like you said, the metaverse term has become almost too abstract and in many ways, sometimes a negative connotation just because we don't understand what it is. And so I think if everyone comes in saying, what's this word, you're quick to kind of go the opposite direction and say, well, I'm not familiar with it, so I'd rather talk about something else. And we tried to simplify the term metaverse. And what I can tell you, it's not a game. Right? This is literally the future of what's going to connect mankind. And the best way I can give you is a parallel to the current World Wide Web. And so if you think about the World Wide Web, we have one World Wide Web that is a massive amount of ecosystem for 2D information to be shared globally. And I believe the metaverse is the parallel to the World Wide Web that encompasses 3D spatial content. And we actually have a video that we did to kind of explain this on our website at RP1. And what it does is it really shows the parallel where you have a device, a web browser that allows you to see the World Wide Web, which sits on top of the internet. And we really see the metaverse as the exact same parallel where you have XR devices that connect to a metaverse browser that gets you to see the entire metaverse, all the content built by anyone in the world. And again, it's not just a game. This is actually going to spur one of the largest software transitions we have ever seen since the introduction of the first web browser. And what I mean by that is I believe every single individual and company that currently has web infrastructure is going to move to spatial infrastructure, things that you interact with both spatially through AR glasses and also through VR headsets, where you can join people in the real world and instantly not only connect with them, but also do activities and things, everything from education to business to commerce and some games as well. And so if you think of it that way on how powerful it is, instead of us meeting on a 2D website in a chat room or a forum where I leave a question, hope one day someone comes by, I'm going to be able to join people anywhere with a click of a button. Just like when you open up Chrome, you instantly can go to hundreds of millions of websites. And so hopefully that gives you a good kind of roundabout as far as really what we believe the metaverse is and the importance it's going to be on everyone on the planet.
I appreciate you explaining it so wonderfully and so beautifully. Yes, I think, we humans, we live in a 3D world. But all our interfaces, whether it's a mobile, your PCs, everything, they trap us to a 2D world. And I think we're the cusp of this transition sorts where we'll go from possibly carrying technology to wearing technology, where all the devices, your phones and computers will come maybe closer to our head, these HMDs, the head-mounted devices. And yes, I think we'll transition from that 2D to 3D world. And you painted that world beautifully, that, all those brands, who are on the worldwide 2D web at this point in time, they will need to transition to that world, a 3D interactive, persistent, immersive world. So excited for that space. I'm sure maybe in the next few years, maybe that's going to happen. How it's going to happen, I think that's like speculation. Maybe we can talk about that also. Now, RP1, you guys started as solving the concurrency problem, because in the metaverse, I mean, the largest problem has been the concurrency, having maybe hundreds of thousands of users concurrently present in a single shard, and you guys pretty much kind of, are working towards, solving that. And then you guys have kind of pivoted to this, maybe like a metaverse browser of sorts, So maybe it'll be great if you could talk about your work in solving that problem, the concurrency problem, the multiplayer the platform that you guys built, and then that pivot, which what was the nudge to pivot to like a metaverse browser?
Yep. Well, if you think about it, if you think about the idea of the metaverse being this one persistent world where you can create a one or many avatars and traverse unlimited content, I need to be able to connect to everybody. And there's this challenge that you have with real-time applications. And if you look at a lot of the different platforms today with VR worlds and whatnot, they're basically a snow globe, a small box, and they're limited to about 20. And so if the goal is to connect everyone in the world in one massive metaverse, just like we connect everyone with one World Wide Web, you need technologies that can seamlessly connect all of us without our data sitting on a different server. And let me explain the sharding because it's important. Then I'll go back to kind of where we started. And so if you think about like Fortnite, everyone will say, well, wait a minute, that game scales, right? There's hundreds of millions of people that watched a Travis Scott concert or Marshmello or all these types of things. That's true. But in reality, they were limited to a shard of 100 or less people. And what a shard is basically I'm in an instance or a copy of that experience. And everyone in that instance can talk to each other, but everyone outside can't connect with you. So your data sits on a very, very small shard. And if we want a seamless metaverse where I can instantly go anywhere to any location built by anybody, I need to be able to instantly connect with whoever happens to be there or whoever I want to join me, whether in the real world or in virtual spaces. And so that's why a lot of people said, well, the idea of one metaverse is like 30 years away because hardware is not fast enough. It's not big enough. The CPUs are not strong enough because that's why we have to shard. And so I think everyone is pointing the fingers on hardware, saying it's going to change hopefully in the next couple of decades, and then we'll be able to see the idea of one metaverse. And when we thought about this idea, my co-founder was actually the head architect of Full Tilt Poker. And he had to design a system to put 100,000 concurrent users in a single shard. And there's about a 99% failure rate on anyone that builds these types of technologies. And there's only 3 companies that were able to accomplish this. And when he finally decided to semi-retire, there were lots of things that he looked at the system and said, I wish I did things different architecturally and programmatically. And so he had about 3 years to tinker with software code. I mean, I'm talking about at C-level programming, really hardcore to really understand the impact of how software impacts hardware, CPUs and GPUs and whatnot. And after about 3 years of tinkering, just to give you an idea, they needed between 1,000 and 2,000 servers to handle 100,000 concurrent poker players. With a new software he built, he was able to do it on 1/10 of one server. Imagine a fraction of one server running 1 billion poker company. And think about all the cost savings, the sustainability for the planet, everything imaginable, running things on a very, very small server footprint. And with this technology, when we started talking about the idea of the metaverse not being able to scale, he's like, wait a minute, I've built software that literally solves infinite scalability, not only on one computer that you can maximize, let's say 1,000 times, but he can connect as many computers together as necessary for the entire world's population. And so right now, as you imagined, we actually do have a browser that has what's called a spatial fabric, and this can handle upwards of 100,000 concurrent users with full 6-stop and spatial audio, where I think the next best technologies are in the 50 to 100 range. And from what I'm being told in the research that we do, it's probably in the 20 with decent frame rates. And so you can imagine 20 versus 100,000, it's a major leap in technology. And we believe we can just add more computers around the globe to seamlessly get to millions of concurrent users, eventually hundreds of millions, and then eventually a billion once the entire world wants to be connected in real time.
Lovely. How cool is it that, so Sean, can you, also maybe elaborate on what was the nudge to pivot from building a multiplayer to like a metaverse browser?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think all companies, they start off, and we were hoping that we were going to announce to the world that we scientifically had a massive software discovery, which we think is one of the biggest discoveries in software. And so we went out and announced that. And I think everyone was like, well, that's great, but why would you ever want 100,000 people right in front of you? Why would you want even a million? Like it just was like, I don't comprehend why we want that many people in a single application. And we had to educate and say it's not about a single application. It's actually horizontal scale across all applications. And so if you think about the metaverse, we have presence and we have to be able to move in and out of different experiences connecting to everyone. And so when you start thinking of it through that lens, you can understand why we need scale. But when you go to the gaming world, which is where most metaverse technologies lie, they're like, why would you ever want to connect that many gamers in some single, either MMO or game? And the answer would be is most of the time you don't, and you want very few. But for us, we understand the metaverse and the future of the spatial internet needs that type of scalability. More importantly, because we can do it on 1,000 times less computers, we're actually pushing the idea that everything can be built just like at the cost of websites. And the reason why that's super important is everyone should be able to wake up no matter where you're at in the world, no matter how much money you have, and be able to create a website to communicate to the world. And with these technologies being so expensive, that's why you're beholden to these large walled garden platforms, because they have to build those technologies and then force you to build in their ecosystem, which is where they make all their money, versus you be able to build your own infrastructure, which is why the browser becomes extremely important for the evolution of the metaverse.
Right. So Sean, you mentioned possibly like millions of concurrent users in a single shard, Can you paint a picture, so maybe like the audience also can understand, what this metaverse future is going to look like, when there are millions of people existing in a single server space, and what would be those use cases or applications you see coming out of that?
Yeah, I think I want to go away from virtual worlds and talk about kind of the future of AR glasses, because that will make the virtual worlds more important. And I think right now, and the reason why I say that is if you think of VR, I'm a big fan of VR. Right now, they sell probably about 20 to 30 million VR headsets a year, which is more aligned to gaming consoles like Xbox or PlayStation. And so it's become kind of this gaming unit where I can download a game, play a game, and it's pretty novel, right? I enjoy kind of playing this thing. But I think for VR to be more important, which it will, AR has to take off. And what I mean by that is one day our cell phones, these 6-inch devices, these are really good at looking at 2D information. Like really good. I mean, if you want to go to a 2D website or you want to, type some stuff up, these are great input devices for web infrastructure. And you see this every day in businesses and everything. I think we need to move eventually. And you've heard this from Tim Cook and a lot of major players that are spending hundreds of billions of dollars. You look at Samsung, you look at Meta, you look at Apple, you look at Snap. All these major companies are building AR glasses because they know it's going to replace and make the cell phones obsolete. And the reason why is when I walk around the real world, looking through a 6-inch screen is really, really, really difficult. But if I have AR glasses that allow me to see my entire world in front of me and just give me things that I can interact to make my life better, that's when things are going to be absolutely amazing. Imagine, Eddie, you're in India right now. And what if you were to call me one day and you just show up in front of me and I'm like, hey, what's up, Eddie? As if you're literally right there in real life. That's the first use case. It's just connecting us in a way that we feel this presence, that you are right here with me, even though you're across the world. And so that's first. The second thing is how do we interact with each other? And that may be playing the game of chess. It may be doing a whiteboard or doing a conference, or it allows me to show up at any meeting in the world with a click of a button. No friction. And the second thing is, and really the importance of us walking around is we're going to connect to retailers and things that we do in our daily lives and make it super simple. And I'll give you a great example. We're going to have an AI that's going to pop up and say, how can I help you? Or, hey, schedule this meeting. I'm instantly going to interact with this AI assistant that's right in front of me. I may actually have an AI pet that I get to take care of, which I think a lot of people think is going to be really cool, where I can take care of them as I move around the world as if I had a real pet. And then imagine now if I walk into a retailer, you have Walmart or Costco's or Home Depot's or whatnot, they're going to build their own spatial infrastructure that interacts with me. They're going to greet me when I walk into a store. I'm going to be like, where's the toilet paper? And it's going to draw a digital line on this physical floor and just show me exactly where I need to get my stuff and help me check out, and I can leave the store very easily. Or going to, let's say, a university. A university will literally, I want to find classroom number 1150 or something, and it'll say, no problem. And it draws a digital line and helps me find the classroom. And then when I sit in that classroom, there's going to be lots of content that the professor will have that we can all see through our AR glasses. But here's the killer thing. Now, someone in VR can join us at the same location and interact with all of us, even though they're remote. And this is the power of XR devices. When all of a sudden we have the connective tissues to join anyone in the world in any activity, AR is for when you're there in the real life. But if you can't join, that's when a VR headset is important, because it basically brings all the assets, it brings all the imagery, and allows me to share in the same services that I do in the real world with AR glasses. And so I think you could pick any industry, any company, and I can easily show you how they're going to move from web infrastructure to things that spatially control, not only connecting with their customers, but how they run their entire businesses, Eddie. Imagine if you think of like Costco or Walmart, because it's global, and actually, well, I know Costco is global, but if you think about it, they right now have trucks that come in and deliver shipments. And then you have pallets that need to be moved to certain locations. And all these things are ran by pieces of paper and 2D kind of screens and whatnot. Imagine now I just look at the shipment and I instantly know where that pallet needs to be placed and where the product needs to go on the shelves. How do I interact with my employees? Timesheets, all these things will be ran by their spatial software, which will be that transition that I was talking about from web infrastructure. And that's going to make every employee's dream, because it's going to make it easy for them to train, to understand how to interact with their other customers and what they should do on their daily jobs, whether that's in a restaurant or if it's in a hotel, doing all their so-called paperwork. That's all going to be spatially done now, where it makes it super easy to interact with our daily lives. And so hopefully that paints a picture. I can go on, but I always crack up because everyone's like, what's that one killer use case? And I'm like, well, that's like you asking me, what's the killer use case of the World Wide Web? And all the websites that are built. I'm like, it's endless on how we connect with each other. And so the same thing goes for the metaverse and kind of where we're heading towards.
Right. Yes, Sean, really, I thought you painted a very beautiful picture, this marriage of sorts, of the physical world with the digital world. And I guess just to maybe kind of, simplify this to the audience, because maybe, the audience needs to understand, that when we're talking about like a metaverse browser, it's not that you don't just use it on your PCs, but that PC is going to come on your head wearable device. And that's what's going to make the difference. And the entire world is going to be digitized, it's going to be mapped one-to-one, and we'll have like a digital representation of the physical world. Yes. So I think that's a beautiful world that you painted, Sean. What have been the drawbacks of that dreams becoming a reality? What do you think is keeping us away from this world that you painted?
Yeah, I think I can start off with answering that. And it's actually a really, really good question. If you think about the past, because I think we can always learn from history to understand what the future lies and kind of the current mistakes that we could potentially be making. And if you look at the past, the internet was formed with a lot of walled garden platforms like AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. And their sole mission as a company was to keep you inside their walls, right? AOL wanted to give you email. They wanted to give you the news. They wanted to give you the ability to shop and do things completely within their walls. And they're one of the largest companies in the world at that time. And one thing that you can't compete with is an open ecosystem. And when someone finally introduced the idea of a web browser, and standards started to be creating, it was impossible for AOL to compete with all of the creators and developers and engineers that could build the pieces necessary for the World Wide Web. And eventually, no matter how much money you have, it was impossible to compete with that open ecosystem because it removed the friction, because everyone had to download and install and go into AOL, where once you learned a browser, the masses could be a part of the internet. It made it simple. My grandmother could literally learn to use a browser once, and instantly she could connect to hundreds of millions of locations and not have to learn new technologies. And so the browser itself removed the friction and really brought us into the World Wide Web. And we're repeating history today with that same idea. If you look at the Metas and all these different companies that have built a walled garden platform where you build inside their walls and you have their rules, you have the limitations of them building pieces that you have to wait for if that's important to your business. But more importantly, I don't believe any business that I described earlier in your previous question will ever build inside any company. No different than if I build my web infrastructure, they run that on their own servers. They own all of their data, all of their revenue. And so for us to really migrate to an open metaverse, we're repeating history and we have to move towards an open ecosystem, a true open metaverse where everyone can participate at every level. And so that's why the importance of a metaverse browser will really hopefully usher in faster to this idea of an open metaverse, where not only can I remove friction, which I believe is one of the biggest problems in the entire XR space. Because think about this. If I imagine, and it's funny, I was just at AWE and they did a talk with all the hardware AR manufacturers. And the panel asked a question, the leader of the panel asked a question. He said, well, if you build your own ecosystem and you build your own ecosystem and you build your own system, how are we all going to learn these different ways of building for those ecosystems and whatnot? And there was silence on the panel because it was kind of like, well, the best person will win, best company will win, and we'll all follow in that. And my argument is, no, we have to build an open ecosystem where the AR glasses can instantly connect to a browser and connect to an endless amount of AR content built by anybody. That's going to allow it to grow faster than any one company can ever build on their own. And history has shown us this. And so I think it's really important that we create an open ecosystem and remove the friction so the masses can click a button and instantly be connected to somebody, just like we open up one single browser and instantly can connect to content that is endless around the world. And so I think those are some of the biggest hurdles. And from a technical standpoint, this is probably the most important is there's three pieces that need to be solved. And I think that to really make this come alive, one is you need to be able to scale and connect the world's population, which we have just discussed. The second is that, and you mentioned this in your question, you need a map, a spatial map that is a digital twin and contiguous of our entire planet. And that technology we have solved. We've actually created a digital twin of our entire solar system that's scalable completely outside of our universe for an endless amount of content. And the reason why you need a digital twin of planet Earth is that the browser needs to know where you're walking and connect you to third-party services built by all these companies. And so what I mean by that is if I walk around, it needs to know where I'm standing on planet Earth and connect me to services based of my proximity, actually where I'm standing. So if I go in front of a Wells Fargo or I go in front of another store, it will start streaming, just like streams websites. It'll start streaming me these real-time services running on their servers and allow me to interact with that content. And so the idea of a single map is extremely important that we can all inhabit and move around and traverse. And the third piece of technology is how do you connect real-time applications? How do you connect real-time software that exists anywhere and have people instantly interact with it without having to install these small apps? Because the last thing you're going to want to do is walk around the real world and have to have literally thousands of apps that you have to go in and out of just to interact with them. That's going to be massive amount of friction, which I believe is the direction a lot of AR headset manufacturers are going towards. They're trying to replicate the cell phone ecosystem, and they're not realizing that these are not cell phones. These are XR devices that will interact and need a very special delivery system to make it easy for everyone to connect to.
Right. Sean, you mentioned that these three problems, these largest problem. One, how to scale the single spatial map and connecting to real-time softwares. The third, maybe that could be done. Scaling. I mean, because it's a small team. How do you plan to do that? Because unlike the earlier days, today's Web 2.0 is extremely competitive. It's run by big tech. It's centralized, monopolized, and obviously there's going to be a pushback. Because nobody wants the users to transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 or the the future of internet that you guys are kind of building. And how do you, what's your plan in mind to kind of solve for that to scale? And when you talk about spatial map, maybe I would love you to, would want you to kind of elaborate on that, because, when you're talking about spatial map, you're saying that you would eventually want to map the physical world 1:1 to the digital world, and that I'm sure is going to be extremely, extremely cumbersome. There's NVIDIA, which is trying to work towards, kind of, there are companies besides NVIDIA. There's many because we're in the autonomous vehicle space, trying to kind of map the physical world so that, to make their cars drive to the space, But when you say that you create a spatial map, one of the entire Earth, can you elaborate on that? We will appreciate that.
Yep. So a spatial map is extremely important because unlike the current browser, websites don't have any spatial inference. There's no reason for you to worry about Amazon.com and Nike.com. In fact, they're completely separated. So when I go to Nike.com, it will instantly bring me Nike's web server. And if I go to Amazon.com, now I leave that server and I go to another one. But the challenge that you have when you move to AR glasses or XR devices in general is that everything is all based spatially and proximity wise. And so you need to walk around and be able to connect to things that you're actually in your view. So think about it. It doesn't matter if you're in India or you're in Asia or you're in the United States, wherever it is, as you walk around, there's all these businesses and stores and places and conference centers that you can interact with just in real life, right? And so you need to be able to give a vehicle to each of these places to build their own content and be able to share it instantly with everyone in the world. And so if you were to have, it's kind of like if you had a snow globe, and I was kind of going back to the idea of downloading these apps. Imagine the experience of, there's two experiences. One is I put on my AR glasses and all of a sudden I walk near Wells Fargo and I'm greeted with, I basically have to now download something, install it on my AR glasses, create an account, create an avatar, and then figure out how to interact with just what they built. And then I have to do that again for every single system that I go to, versus if I just have a spatial browser that connects me to a map where all these things reside. And I think the best equivalent I can give you is think about ICANN for websites, right? We have a direction system where, there's .com, there's .net, there's all these places where all the websites reside, correct? And so it's all mapped out for us for 2D websites. We need the equivalent for spatial volumetric space that are owned by different people all over the world. And so you need the ability for these businesses to be able to connect to their customers or their employees seamlessly. And the ROI is there. I think everyone is waiting to figure out how to actually migrate and move towards these technologies. And there's a couple things that need to happen for that to work. And by the way, if you go to any Fortune 2000 or even 5,000 company, I guarantee you they have an XR department of one or many people that their sole job is to research and be ready for this transition and understand what it's going to take from a technological standpoint. The challenge is that the hardware needs to catch up and be ready, which is there's a race right now for the first commercially viable AR glasses. And once that happens, they're going to look around and say, well, I'm never going to build in something. So we're going to have to build an open ecosystem that rivals the ability to run their own web infrastructure. And so I think the first question you asked before we went to the spatial map was, how did people start adopting or going in this direction? And imagine asking that question in the first web browser. The answer is, in the beginning, people are going to kind of feel out and understand what the web browser is. I'm hopeful that we're much further along from a technological standpoint because we understand what the browser has done for the World Wide Web. I believe people can see that easy transition to a 3D spatial browser that enables us to connect to this content with giving the ownership and the data to the people that participate versus one company. And so literally RP1's job is you don't build in RP. RP1 is literally just like Chrome, but for the metaverse that is specifically solving metaverse problems, not for 2D websites, which is very, very different problem to solve. And so we are building the construct of the browser that is focused purely on the XR content and connect it from any device. So you can still come in a mobile and a desktop device, but man, it will shine with AR and VR headsets. And so I think once you create this open ecosystem, people will come. But more importantly, if you want to build your own space with more than 20 people in there, we have the only technology on the planet that can make that possible. And so we're hopeful that a lot of people are going to say, you know what, I do want to talk with more than 20. I do want to have a conference. I do want to have these cool experiences or meetups or all these things. And I believe we can not only give that technology to people, but we're going to do it closer to the cost of websites, which is next to nothing. And so people are going to be able to build on their own servers, own their own assets, own their own data, their revenue. And the job of the browser is just to point at that content and stream it in real time to make the experience absolutely seamless for anyone that wants to go to those areas.
Right. Yeah. I think, we are seeing a transition of sorts where maybe these companies, all around the world are seeing that there is this transition from 2D to 3D, and some of the really big companies are seeing that and working towards that, creating a team so that they can build out their XR content or services. I also work for this company called Shimaro. It's one of India's largest media and entertainment company, and we are tasked for towards building like a metaverse. And in India, the problem is the headset adoption is way low. It's because India is a very cost conscious country, and so the management has pushed us to make sure that the application that we build, a virtual world of sorts, works on your desktops and your Androids, and then the HMDs. So we've built like a social world of sorts, and this is built on Unity for WebGL, so that works on browsers and stuff like that. And I think the largest problem we faced over there is having multiple concurrent users. We using Photon Fusion over there. Now the problem here again with these WebGL build is that like if when I kind of serve it to my consumer, the client, it really depends upon what PCs or laptops that they're using, and it depends on the GPUs that they use, and because of which, if my data 3D data is very heavy, then the performance is very bad over there. Do you see? Is RP1 looking to solve that problem where maybe even if it's graphics heavy, maybe it might work on your browser? Is that like the path that you're taking? And maybe also will be great if you could talk about your shardless architecture. How does it differ from your traditional other multiplayer systems? Because there are besides the traditional guys, there are also players such as Improbable and Metagravity who are working on these multiple player systems. So maybe you could talk about these couple of questions.
Yeah, all the companies you just named are really good pioneers in the space. They're solving really hardcore problems at the server level and software and whatnot. And I try to not overtly, talk the difference between what we do and what they do. I think we're solving a potentially a different problem. I think they look at it as, how do you build a game and have more scale? We're trying to connect the world's population to metaverse content to make it seamless to traverse a single metaverse, right? And it's not about just us being the de facto browser. I believe there will eventually be many browsers that are following our guides, where there will be standards where anyone can build a browser. So while we're the first, we're hopeful that there will be a second and a third immediately, because you need multiple browsers. God forbid if RP1 were never to succeed or whatnot, your content still has to live. No different if Chrome were to go out of business, you still have Safari and Edge and Firefox and many other browsers that exist based on the same open standards. And so I think we're setting the stage for standards that allow you to build these content on your own servers. And yes, you do have limitations with the scale. And you threw a lot at me, a couple of things. So let me unpack that. If you think about the scenes and the graphics, it's very different when you do a pre-compiled experience where I have to download something. And so let's say that's a couple gigabytes worth of data, which gives me the entire scene graph. And then I'm able to now interact with it. When you talk about the idea of the metaverse, we believe that it has to stream in real time. So if you want think about the definition, I'm an avatar and I'm seamlessly walking, running, or teleporting instantly to all these different places. The vision was not I was going to download and install something once I get to every single destination, right? It was supposed to be seamless, just like I'm seamless in the real world. Like if I were to start walking from here to India, I'm going to see lots of places in between these two locations, and it's all going to be there in real time. And we need that same experience. And we're building technology that solves what is called a spatial fabric. And the spatial fabric has that map that I was talking about. And so if you think about the browser, the browser's job is to render the world, and there'll be lots of browsers. But I believe there'll be very few spatial fabrics that solve not only a contiguous map, but provide certain services that allow you to interact with that map. And so when you build your location and you point it at a certain location at the map, you'll instantly get that scale where people can easily traverse and experience your location. So you no longer have to worry about the idea of scale. Now, currently, there are some limitations in what we're presenting to the world. We are a browser in a browser. So you can open up Chrome and go to rp1.com and click enter, and you're instantly inside of our browser. And once you're inside, there's this absolutely unlimited map, including a digital twin of Earth. You can fly up to space, see Earth rotating, go to any location on planet Earth. That's all eventually going to be owned by people that actually own their space in the real world. And then outside of our solar system is to build anything you can imagine. And so we're trying to build that map layer that makes it seamless for any company to build whatever space that they want and not worry about the scale of people connecting and interacting at that space. And so I think we've tackled it in the sense of a very different level of software that makes it seamless for that scale to happen using a lot less servers. And so for us, we can transfer those costs to all these people building content to make it easy for them to build their so-called metaverse location and interact with anyone in the world without having to build that infrastructure on their own. And so it's just a very different. And if I had to tell you exactly how we did it, then I'd have to kill you. And so I don't want to. It's the one thing. It's the one thing that we're keeping close to our vest, just because if the big guys were to find out how we do this, we kind of lose a little bit of our competitive advantage to create this open ecosystem, because they'll use that to create a walled garden system. And they have hundreds of billions, and we're a 10-person company. So it's we want to hold that. But everything we do, we're going to open source and open standard, and eventually we'll actually open source the server technology so that everyone can benefit from it around the world. So we're getting there.
Right. And what's the go-to-market strategy? When is RP1 going live? And if some developers or content creators who wants to come onto your platform and start building, how does or she start from?
Yeah. And I don't want to call us a platform, because I feel like we're an open ecosystem. Again, maybe people refer to Chrome as a platform, but I don't think so. I think it's more of just a window into the content that is built by you that you own on your servers. And so, I think if developers want to build on the open standards, we actually are live today. We were just recently at AWE. We had a press release, and we are 24/7 open. So you can literally go there now, click enter, and instantly go in world to some temporary content that we've built to show what's possible. And you're able to, create an account. You can create friends. You can find them seamlessly, no matter where they're at in the world. We have a couple of third-party services to show you the real-time APIs that work, where you walk close to a movie and it instantly starts streaming from a completely separate server. You have the ability to control a light bulb in one of our developers' office, and it's all persistent. So everything you control, everyone around you will see it happening in real time. And you can even use the Force to move a spaceship. And all of those things are not hard coded into the browser. It's completely separated on a different server to show you all the technologies that we're showing what's possible for the metaverse. In about 3 months or so, we're going to make an announcement that you'll be able to start building your own metaverse server, point it at the map, and instantly people will be able to go to your location. That all the data that sits on your servers, you're going to point it at the map, and people will be able to go there from any device and instantly be able to roam around and interact with your space. And so we're looking at about 3 months for that to be possible. But right now, what you can do with the browser is not only meet up with anyone in the world, but you can actually create Zoom-like meetings today. So that means if you want to create something as much as 250 people, you can create a short term, just like Zoom. You create an account, and you're like, hey, I want to have a meeting with Eddie next week, and we're going to have 50 or 100 people show up. It gives me a URL, and I can pass that URL to anyone. If they click it, they will instantly be taken inside the browser to a specific private room that you can interact with those people, and you can password protect it and everything. But when you close that meeting, they can now go anywhere they want in the world. And eventually those are going to be real locations that you can go to, like museums or stores, or fictitious ones like MMOs or games or casinos or anything imaginable built by anybody. And so you're really going to have that real interaction. And so you can demo it today and check out the technology. But the thing is, don't judge us on the graphics, because again, this is a browser in a browser using WebXR, which is very limited in graphics. But our goal is to get partners and people to build the first native browser, one that you install just like you install Chrome. And that's where the graphics are going to increase. And we're going to eventually get to Unreal level graphics, all streaming in real time. It's actually going to be magical.
How cool would that be? Because I think maybe the challenge, the drawback at this point in time is the graphics. Hopefully, when you get like a proper native browser, I'm sure the visual fidelity is like completely gonna go up. Is there any developer or creator support at this point in time? the world has completely changed at this point in time, because what I mean by that is that earlier, it used to be like, people used to kind of, code right from scratch. But now there are people who do vibe coding, and there's people prefer like no code, will there be something like that for creators who can just come in and, kind of build without knowing how to code? How would that work? I mean, if somebody wants to kind of create and build a website, a 3D metaverse, and host it on RP1, how would that work?
So if you remember when the first web browser came out, there was an opportunity for companies like WordPress to start to create tools for the open World Wide Web. And a lot of the tools that exist today are really built to formulate pre-compiled applications, which is very different than streamable applications or services. And so our goal is to partner with some of the great tool companies that exist in the XR space and the gaming space to build tools for the open metaverse. And there's also opportunities for new companies, new individuals to start building these types of tools that allow you to build and deploy for the browser. Because remember, you're using those tools to build them on your own servers and just point it at the browser, but you just need to confine to the limitations of how you stream. Just like you have open standards on how you display HTML data for websites, you need kind of those standards to give guidance as far as how to build and what's possible with the current browser. And once we get to a native browser, I think that's going to unlock even further. Again, it's not RP1. It shouldn't be RP1's job to build all of that. Neither was it, for the first web browser. Again, you have millions of companies like Canva and Squarespace and Wix and all these standards that made it super easy with no code and full programmability to build websites. That same ecosystem has to exist for the open metaverse, not just one single set of software or standards based on a walled garden platform. And so for us, we're hopeful that a lot of people will join us in this journey. And obviously, we're going to keep building until we can hand that baton to other amazing companies and individuals that really want to build these open ecosystems. And don't worry about the graphics. I think, look, I'm a gamer at heart. I grew up a gamer. I love me some good graphics and everything. But I'll tell you, when you go inside of RP1, and we've had lots of meetings and we've had get-togethers and this, you almost forget about the graphics because the level of presence of people there, and you just hear their spatial audio. You instantly can interact with them. They're seeing my hand movement. I can point in that direction and they look over in that direction. And you get that feeling as if they're like right next to you. The graphics are going to come. And we spent, obviously we're a 10-person company, and my partner and co-founder, he always reminds me, he's like, well, when we can hire 10 more people, you can have that, because I want lots of stuff. I'm like, I want amazing graphics. I want these features. I want better avatars. But we're not trying to present the entire ecosystem. We're trying to present technologies that can create an open metaverse that the entire world can benefit from. And so we're hopeful that we make enough noise that people are like, this is the direction that we need to go through as an industry, as a culture, as a community, so that we can all participate and not be beholden to one company. And to us, we're hopeful that they'll join us in this path. We're just starting the path and saying it's possible. And the graphics, if you go into RP1 now, we do have a couple places that you can go to that I think the graphics are a little bit higher. They really look great. And we just don't have the bandwidth to really spend a lot of time on the graphics. But guess what? As soon as we open our doors, we've had so many developers and creators reach out to us saying, hey, we'll build something. We can make something look amazing in these spaces. And we're like, awesome. So we're starting to work with the community, and we'll start manually putting that in. But in 3 months, they'll be able to do that without even talking to us. They'll be able to just start building whatever they want, just like you build your own website, and people will instantly go there. And so I think that the focus should be less on graphics and more on how it connects us all, and understand the graphics are going to be solved. That's a no-brainer. And we actually have, so LA SIGGRAPH, I'm sure you're familiar with SIGGRAPH, which is a global organization. The LA chapter actually built their own location, and you can go there in the browser. And so it shows you how seamless that they can build their own scene, and instantly you can go to that location and you'll be transported to where they're at. And this is all seamless. I want to be really, really clear. If you walk, fly, or teleport, anywhere you teleport, you can walk and fly to that same location. It is literally a singular map. No one has been able to achieve this at 32-bit level. And we are literally have a patent because we solved how to make this possible. And so that's why you can literally go on planet Earth, fly up to space, see Earth rotating, see the sun coming up and orbiting. It's absolutely amazing. You literally feel like you're in this contiguous, massive map. And once you can see that, you'll start seeing the future of how we can now seamlessly connect all these locations with 3D information and spatial audio. We can all interact instead of just staring at flat maps that we can't interact with. And so that's the big difference of the metaverse, is these are places that you need to traverse. We need to be able to walk in Times Square and connect to all that content and people that are looking at the same thing as if you're actually in New York. And to me, that is what the metaverse is all about. And we're presenting the technology that can make that possible.
Right. So I mean, so very cool. Kudos to you and your team. And I wish that the team grows, and I wish that it gets funded, and all that what you said comes true. Because yes, I think maybe for the general people, I think the problem is that maybe they look for when you talk about metaverse, they expect it to be better than like a 2D applications. And maybe at this point in time, I think the drawback or the problem is the visual fidelity. But I'm sure that that's like, I mean, maybe in the next few years it's going to be solved, and maybe we'll get into these photorealistic worlds. Sean, where do you see the monetization opportunity, and being the first in the world to kind of pull up like a do something like a metaverse browsers? I'm sure there's pros, but I'm sure that there's also cons also of that. So it would be great if you could talk about like the metaverse monetization opportunity and the pros and cons of doing something which is the first of its kind in the world.
Well, being a pioneer is very lonely, Eddie, and I'm sure you've started a couple of things we talked beforehand, and being an entrepreneur and really trying to get a industry that has dreamt about a vision to come together with technologies is challenging, right? There's a part of it is education, part of it is saying this is real. And I think the XR industry has gone really through its ups and downs. I think there's always this excitement. I remember when Google Glass came out, and then it kind of didn't really do well. And you have all these things where people have envisioning this future for quite some time. Decades have gone by, but you have to look around and say, wait a minute. This is really the first time all of the biggest tech companies are putting a massive R&D dollars towards this future, because they now all buy that it's now possible. We are getting to the point where AR glasses are going to be a thing. It's just a matter of time. Smaller, better VR headsets are going to be a thing. Remember when mobile devices first came out, they were like a briefcase and attached to your car and whatnot. And eventually now they're little flip phones and things that we just throw in our pocket. And so when there's a will and there's a way and there's a vision, people will continue to solve. But I think there's a bigger thing that we're trying to accomplish. It's not about us being even a company. We're really trying to build a community around the future of these XR technologies. We're trying to empower the people that have built this industry together to make sure they're a part of it going forward. Because I think a lot of companies, they look at, well, how can I use these technologies that no one else has and build a closed ecosystem and make a massive amount of money? And for us, it's the opposite. We want to empower every single creator that I believe has really got the wrong end of the stick, right? They're UGC. It's like, come build in our wall garden platform and we'll give you 10 cents on the dollar and thank you for the billions of dollars that we're making. And that's not fair. And I don't think that's fair for the developers, the creators, and more importantly, the businesses are not going to jump in to start building all this XR content until they know they can own their own infrastructure. And so I believe that we're starting a movement towards this open ecosystem that is necessary for the masses to start adopting these technologies. If you remove the friction, you make it easy for everyone to start building and not worry about their ownership and data, then now people can raise their hand and say, I'm going to build a better avatar system. I'm going to solve graphics. I'm going to build a moderator tool. Even like a moderator tool is a perfect example. Roblox is a giant public company and they still have a moderator problem. But everyone is beholden to how they're going to solve. Think about it. They're going to solve this problem versus the world needs to solve this problem. And so when you have an open metaverse, Eddie, you can wake up one day and say, I'm going to build a moderator tool that I give to everyone that they can use at their location that can scrub the audio. So if I curse, it kicks me out or gives me warnings. Maybe there's a way to bad actors to kick them out. But it shouldn't be the job of one company to build all these technologies because it's going to take too long. You and I are going to be long gone, or we'll have to wait for our grandkids to see these problems solved if we're going to wait for one company to do it. When you create an open ecosystem, it is literally like the California gold rush. It is an opportunity for everyone to make money, to win, to create pieces of this open ecosystem. Just like think of the hundreds of millions of jobs that the World Wide Web created. And so everyone's worried about AI. And I say, don't worry, because there's going to be new jobs and new frontiers that are going to need lots of amazing creators and developers. We just have to create and start that ecosystem. And hopefully the quicker that we get out of the way, and it'll enable all these people in the XR industry that dream about the same vision that we have to start building for it, we're going to get there a lot faster. And to me, that is exciting as a, kind of thinking about what that future looks like, because I don't want just RP1 to succeed. I want to envision that world. I want to be a part of it. I want it to make my life easier. I want to be able to connect to people that I haven't seen in decades because they live on the other side of the planet. And for them to be right next to me playing the game of chess with a click of a button and no app installs, and we just connect seamlessly. To me, that's a dream. And I think that is all technically possible today. We just need to hopefully bring everyone together to march down that path and make it possible. So we're really, really excited about that.
Right. Exciting times. Sean, you were there at the and I think what I kind of, saw, I mean, the media, it said that, there's this an XR plus AI convergence, and that convergence of sorts is going to kick drive the market. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, XR plus AI convergence?
Yeah. So AI are tools. They're ways for us to connect to people and interact with them or steer them in certain directions. And I think there's a lot of people that think AI is going to be amazing. Some people are scared of AI on the inference that it can control you and tell you and make inferences to guide you into certain things that using your psychology kind of against you. And to us, if you're able to give ownership to each of these locations, it's up to you to figure out how you're going to interact with those things on your own. So AI, like, let me give you an example. You give ownership to these different locations, and then it's up to you as a consumer. Just like you trust certain websites, you're going to trust locations based on the type of things that they do with their technology. And so the browser gives a way for you to connect all these AI applications to anyone in real time through this browser. So I'll give you a great example. Let's say you're an NPC character company, a non-player character software. This is real-time software. Well, how do you make it easy? Like let's say, Eddie, you and I want to build a store, and obviously we don't want to be there 24/7 to say hi and show them where our wares are. You're going to want some AI to greet them and be super nice and help them kind of navigate the store. Well, does that mean you and I have to start building from scratch an NPC software? The goal is that we can connect to these real-time APIs, AI solutions that can now interact with our customers without having to build it from scratch. And so now think about connecting to NPCs or any AI that will assist us in navigating the real world. And now you as an AI developer don't have to worry about how hard it is to connect to your software. That's what the browser makes. It makes this whole ecosystem come together, including Web3 technologies. It's no different than if you think about the World Wide Web and all the standards, all these plugins, all these things that make websites go around now can happen because of those open standards. And we're trying to create that same thing. So AI is, I think, going to be a big deal. It really creates tools that make things easier, whether it's creating spaces, creating worlds, or creating your software, or is it connecting with your customers or interacting with them? All of this AI is just going to be ways to make all these things happen faster and easier. And the browser actually brings it together, which is, I think, is going to really make it progress much, much faster.
Right. Sean, it was really, really cool speaking to you. My last question to you will be great if you could paint a picture of what we can expect in the next 5 years with RP1, and maybe give a pitch to those developers, creators, investors, whoever listening about RP1.
We are a small bootstrapped company. We have an unbelievable team that has a shared vision on how do you bring the world together. And whether that's through free speech, whether that's through ownership and data, I think all of our creators and developers in our company has been, I hate using the word, but screwed by the big guys, right? And I think for us, we easily could have gone a different direction with these technologies. And we decided that this is important to really give to the world and bring us together. And so, I don't like to give a pitch because that sounds very corporate-like, but this is really an olive branch to the entire community of creators and developers that feel like they don't have ownership of the idea of the metaverse, the same way that they had ownership in the World Wide Web. This is a call out to the corporations that they can start building spatial infrastructure and know that they can build for an open ecosystem. And from either philanthropy or investors, this is really a call out to say that you can be a part of. It's not often that you can be a part of something that can change the entire world. And no different than what the current web browser has done worldwide, we believe that the metaverse browser is going to accomplish something as big, if not bigger, because it's going to impact our daily lives from when we wake up to when we go to sleep and really bring us together in a way that we probably couldn't understand until COVID happened, right? And when COVID took away our ability to be in places in real life, it was extremely lonely. And if you think about what the World Wide Web has done to bring us together and sharing information, gaming and social and all that type of stuff, the metaverse just takes this to the next level. And so this is really an olive branch saying, hey, we're building an open ecosystem. We want to join hands with everyone that wants to help build it with us together. And I think that's what's going to make it possible, because the World Wide Web could not be built by any one company. It was built by many, many individuals and people that saw a vision for the planet. And so this is less about making money. It's more about how can we make an impact on our daily lives and bring us together as a race. And I think that's super, super important. And so this is more of an olive branch, and come join us in building this open ecosystem. And you're welcome to reach out to me directly. Please go to rp1.com. Experience the technology, understand the connective tissues that a click of a button and you and I can instantly interact and have a conversation like this, but fully be able to see each other and interact and go somewhere together and have those experiences. And once people start building, I think this will take off. I mean, everyone will have a chance to start building their piece, and it's going to be super exciting.
Thank you, Sean, for taking time and being part of the podcast. It was lovely to learn about what you are building, right from the single sharded multiplayer architecture to this open metaverse of sorts that you are building. I think the world is completely going to change. When Sir Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web, I mean, he wanted it to be, decentralized, but I think, it's gone to a direction where it's completely centralized. Like you through the course of the conversation, you spoke about how creators are juiced out, by these big tech companies. We desperately need this change, and I hope that what you're talking about becomes a reality, and I hope that the people, developers, content creators join together in building this future. So really kudos to you guys and to my listeners. If you like what you see and hear, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Thank you, Sean. Really appreciate this.
Cool. Thank you so much, Eddie. Great having this.